Hey there everybody, it's Nathan Cool with nathancoolphoto.com, and in this tutorial I wanted to show you one of my favorite presets used for exterior photography. Now we think a lot of times that interiors can be challenging, but exteriors have their own challenges too, and making those go quickly, having a preset in Lightroom can really get you where you need to be most of the time. It's a really good starting point. So one of the things I talk about in my exteriors book on real estate photography is how to do some exposure blending, maybe some sky swaps, but one of the most important thing are the presets that are in there. So what I'm going to show you today is how to make one of those presets, and this is going to be derived a little bit off of what I use for pools, but I use it also for most exteriors, so it doesn't take it necessarily to the extent I might for using backyards that have pools, but it's still going to blue up the sky really well. It's going to highlight the grass. It's also going to take away some of the shadows, add enough of the other adjustments in Lightroom so that quickly with one click you can get most of what you'll need. So I'll show a few examples. First off though, I'll show you what the numbers are so you can see what that is, and then if you'd like to stick around through the rest of this video, I'll take that a little bit further, showing some other examples, showing why that works best in certain situations, why another derivative of that particular preset is also useful. I call it a medium exterior preset, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what can do to take that a little bit further. A few other adjustments that you would do in Lightroom after applying this preset, especially to the front exterior of homes and also to the backyards in some cases as well. So you ready to get started on this? Let's take a look. So here we have a standard exterior. I've cropped this down a little bit, and I wanted to show you first off a difference too. Now if you know from my work in the exterior book, one of the things I talk about is that I tend to use these as TIFFs, and the reason being is that if I took the raw file directly into Lightroom, we'd have some differences. This is how Lightroom, without any adjustments really, just lens correction and a few simple things with chromatic aberration, tried to then decode, or what they call debayer, the raw file from Nikon. So using Nikon's OEM software, I get a little bit of a better result. You can see it's more even. It doesn't have those real dark contrasts like the side of the house here, and the raw file was way too dark. It's way too light over here when we compare that against what my camera actually took, and then of course the OEM software. So that's a subject I cover in the exteriors book, but for right now we're not going to worry about that so much. I just want to point that out so that as you see that I'm working with TIFF files, that's the reason why I don't do that. For interiors, it's far too much work, but for exteriors, since there's fewer, and also for to get the color accuracy, which will be more relatable to everybody, then for other reasons that I state also in the book that we're going to deal with that. So anyways, let's get on with the preset for this. This is without any adjustments applied to it. All that I did was just crop it down a little bit, imported it. There was some other stuff, just basic stuff for the lens correction done in the OEM software. So this is basically a raw file, even though it is a TIFF. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to now apply the preset, and I'm going to show you what that is. So applying the preset does this to it. So quite a difference. If we take a look at the before and after on that preset, we can see there's quite a difference. So here before, typical of a raw file, it's somewhat flat looking, and then once we get into the after, we can see there's a much bluer sky, nice rich colors there, nice rich colors on the grass, and by the way, that's a shadow that I would take out from the realtor sign that was in the yard. That's why I cropped it down like so. But anyways, that's an adjustment for later during the post-processing of this picture. But as far as the preset goes, you can see that looks really nice, and that's all that preset was. And by the way, to get to this before and after view, I'll go back to where I was. All you have to do is press Y, and then I hit tab, and that gets rid of everything on the side. So now I can just bring that back. So instead of having to go through the menus, that's what we had. So for our before and after. So what is that preset and what consisted of it? Now once again, this is just a starting point, but let's go over here to the right-hand panel and take a look at what that did. So the first thing it did was it changed the contrast by just 5. It upped the contrast to 0.5, and then it took the highlights down to -74. It upped the shadows by 42, it upped the whites by 44, dropped the blacks by 88, brought the clarity up by 6, the vibrance up by 4, and the saturation up by 2. Those are very minor adjustments. They're important that you don't want to get that surreal look, but you want to add just a little bit of punch. But there's a little bit more too. If if you scroll down here to the HSL section, there's a little bit of saturation on the aquas and the blue. And that really helps bring out a little bit more of that blue sky without saturating other colors, without oversaturating especially the color of the house. We really don't want to go too far with that. And then the last thing that's done, if we go down here to detail, sharpening is brought up by 30 and the mask is brought up to 35. And that gets us where we need to be, and for the most part, that's all that we'd need to do. Now there's a few other things that I would do here, and this is where I wanted to take this then further and show you what we would do with this. The other thing I would do to finish this off is I would use an adjustment brush and I would put some shadows on the front of the house. And this is only one variation. I'm going to show you something else a little bit later here in this tutorial. So here I'm just going to brush that on. You can see how that's highlighting that house. But to be accurate, press your O key and you'll get that red mask. Now you can see where you're painting. So I'm going to go ahead now, I can outline and I know exactly where I'm filling in. I can get quite accurate. I could zoom in if I want to, but I can see now where I'm painting that brush. Press O again, it goes away, and there's our brush. I could up the whites even more a little bit, or what I want to do to add some punch to it. So before I added that brush stroke, we were here. After I added that brush stroke, we were there. But how did I actually make the preset itself? So let's go back and take a look at that. Let's just take a few steps back here and go back to where we were before the preset. Then after the preset, let's say that you added those exact same adjustments. So we've got everything that I showed before. After you've made these adjustments, and you would just adjust these manually first, all you'd need to do is go over to the presets panel on the left, and there's a little plus sign. You click that, and that's how you create a new preset. Now I've created a folder called Tutorial Presets, but you could add a new folder. You could call it wherever you want, or put it under the User Presets, which is default also by Lightroom. Now you can choose what you want to have applied to that preset. In this case, I'm not applying the white balance, and I'm not applying any transformation or lens correction, but basically everything else, and also not calibration. That allows me to be selective, and I can then make many different presets to do different things that won't affect a prior preset. And in this case, I don't want to change white balance. I know what I set in the camera, something I emphasize in the exteriors book. The lens correction and transformation, that could change from picture to picture depending on what I'm doing for some of these transformations before I actually then apply the preset, so I don't want to muck that up. But after you do that, you would just create that. So I'd put under this one, I'd go, let's just call this our toot preset. All that I'd have to do then is just click create. I'll put it under tutorial presets, and then it shows up over here. So all I'd have to do is if I was at the point where I needed to apply the preset, which was here, I could then click just toot preset, and then it applies it right there. So there's our preset, and there's also then, if we take it a bit further, putting that shadow brush in there, we got some pretty good results. So let's take a look at another example that was real similar to that. So here's one that definitely could use some punch. So the problem with this, very common, is that we can't always choose the time of day we want to shoot, and this backyard is being side lit, so the house is a little bit dark on the back of it, and that really doesn't look the best. Now, no presets have been set. What this was a pano that I put together using Photoshop, and it was a 3 wide pano, maybe a 3 high also, or 2 high. But in any case, it's got a little bit of barrel distortion going on here at the house, but I'm really not that worried about it. You can see a little bit of it here at the couch. But for me, that really didn't bother me so much for what was being delivered. There's other shots for the house. But let's see what happens when we go ahead and assign that preset that we had, our toot preset. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that to the house, and it did bring it out. Definitely a difference when we take a look at the before and after. We can see that before it was very flat, not much going on, but look how rich the pool is. The patio is definitely a lot better. But we can do better than that. We also want to lighten up the back of that house. So once again, I can take that shadow brush and I can start painting in that house. And I'll turn on that mask, excuse me, picked the wrong one, and I'll just paint in where I'd like. Get rid of that. Let me select that brush again. I just screwed that up. Add the brush stroke, and now I'll add to that brush. So anyways, just brushing on where I want it. And then we can get rid of those shadows across the house. The mask here really helps quite a bit on taking care of these things. Okay, so anyways, we can get a lighter house, touch that up a little bit. I could go back and brush that in a little bit more and see where I am by going back and forth on the oaky. But the thing here is, and I actually have two brushes there, so let me get rid of that other one. That was my mistake, sorry. But now that we've got that on there, that looks pretty good, not too bad. There's a few other tweaks I might do to it, but for the most part, that was fine. But this was also a hassle, kind of doing this shadow brush. And I even missed a spot up here. And it would be hard maybe getting that chimney, which also should be brighter if the house was going to be this color. So in instances like this, besides using the preset to really bring it out, this is one of the things I talk about in the exteriors book, where I talk about exposure blending. So here's an example. Let's take a look at this particular house here. So this is actually a composite. Hasn't had the preset applied to it yet, but this is actually a composite of two pictures. So here was the high exposure, here's a low exposure shot in a bracket, and then a sky swap was added to it. But by blending these in manually using exposure blending methods that I talk about in the exteriors book, and then adding the sky swap, which also, by the way, is in the exteriors book, and there's videos on my YouTube channel here that show how to do that as well, I've got this type of a product. So this is more evenly lit. I'm not worried then about the shadows on the back of the house. That's already been taken care of for me. All that I have to do now is just apply that preset. So I just apply my preset, and boom, now I've got a very good looking picture. So we went from having either an overexposed picture here or possibly underexposed picture here, taking those together in exposure blending with a sky swap, and then just adding our preset to it, and we've got this for our end result. So that's basically all there is to it. It's a very simple preset. I use this as my go-to. It's the first thing that I try to use. If I have some other issues, if it's on cloudy days, I might have some other preset that I use. If it's a special pool that I'm really shooting, I have one that's specifically just for pools. And as you go along and you start tweaking a preset like this and saving your own, you'll have a collection too that makes post-processing very quick. And using the exposure blending method can save you some time and also some accuracy from trying to just use a shadow brush. Remember too that every single brush and adjustment that you make in Lightroom is starting to change the raw file or the TIFF file or what you're working with. Now you can push that quite a bit, but you always will lose some type of quality, and you lose more quality the further that you push it. So by doing exposure blending, you'll have a real raw file with 100% accuracy and 100% quality, and then exposure blending those together, you won't have to then worry about it. It's not HDR, it's just a matter of masking in one over top of the other in those particular parts. And of course then a sky swap can help. As we saw here, the sky was completely blown out, but those just are other exterior processes and tricks to use. But the key here and the take-home point from this tutorial is with a very simple preset, you can really speed up some of your post-processing and get pictures with a lot of punch. Anyways, I hope this tutorial was useful for you and that you can use some of this in your photography as well. If you did like this video, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It won't cost you anything, and as soon as one of these videos is posted, you'll be the first to know. Thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, take care, be safe, and get out there and shoot something.